Okay, so in this video we're going to be looking at the war in Europe and how it progressed before our involvement and after our involvement. You can see that the Dr. Seuss shirt of the day is the cat in the hat. Who doesn't love the cat in the hat? I certainly do. And yes, and then the next video after this we're going to be looking at the Pacific. Okay, so let's get rolling. You have a chart just like this one. It actually has two sides to it. One is the European front, one is the Pacific front. So, hopefully you're looking at something like this while you complete this. And there's a map that I'm going to be, a hyperlink up here that I'm going to be referring to every now and then. Okay? So, you can see that when we last talked about the war in Europe, we noted that the war actually began when Germany invaded Poland, and I talked about the three-part blitzkrieg or lightning war that Germany used against Poland. And the outcome of that was that simply the British and the French had to go ahead and declare war against Germany, and the war started in the proper sense. And then we talked about, again, in April of 1940, how Germany invaded Northern Europe, and Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg were all conquered. So again, he went through the low countries of the north, as opposed to going southward through Switzerland and the Alps. The Swiss have a lot easier time staying neutral than the Belgians do, because they have the mountains in their country. Everybody always assumes they'll just finish up with Switzerland. They won't start with Switzerland. In 1940, France fell to Hitler, and Vichy France was established. And the Free French movement began, which is basically an underground movement in Germany, in Vichy France against Germany. So there were still people in France who hated Hitler and hated German takeover, but they had to be very careful about how they worked, and so that's why they were called the underground movement. And then if you remember, from July to October of 1940, we had the Battle of Britain. It was an air war against Germany. And somehow the British are able to avoid a German takeover through their resolve and also use of radar. And then we're getting to, in June of 1941, so let's head here to the map and just make sure that now we understand. Wait a minute, where's my cursor? Oh, here it is. We understand what Europe really looked like at this time. Okay, so this map is similar to the one we looked at before. So you can see here that everything that is pink or flesh-colored is basically the Allied countries and the places they've taken over. So you can see how everything in Europe is basically Nazi-controlled or neutral. Okay, these are neutral areas. And that Britain is here all by themselves. Okay, you can also see the Soviet Union here. And how when he attacks here, that the Soviets are going to take a lot of territory into the Soviet Union. They're going to make a lot of progress into the Soviet Union throughout the war. So it really is an amazing amount of territory that Hitler conquered. So in June 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union, and that begins the two-front war that is going to prove so detrimental to Hitler's ability to win the war, because his troops and all of his supply lines are going to be divided. Notice here, it doesn't say this because this is just about Europe, but in 1941, December of 1941, we enter the war here, okay? In 1942, there's a battle called the Battle of Stalingrad. The importance of the Battle of Stalingrad is that this is when Hitler's troops are finally defeated by what the Soviets call their scorched earth policy. The Soviets are very slow to mobilize. They have a very large amount of territory, and they have a hard time getting themselves all mobilized to fight the war simultaneously. So what happens in the Soviet Union is they use a trick that had been used against Napoleon to defeat Napoleon as well. What they do is they just started retreating with their troops all the way from here eastward. And as they go, they burn everything around them and leave very little to subsist off of in their wake. And so as a result, the Germans feel like they're making great progress, and they are. They're coming further and further and faster and faster and faster and faster, deep into Soviet territory. But you can see how long their supply lines are. From Berlin to here is a very long way to try and supply your troops, and they can't steal or live off anything around there because everything's been destroyed. So what this does is it lures the Germans into the Soviet Union right at the time that then a brutal winter hits, and the Nazi soldiers basically freeze to death. They don't die as a result of war wounds. Instead, they die as a result of natural elements, mainly the brutal Soviet winter. Okay, so this is called the scorched earth policy. It looks stupid at first when the Soviets are retreating so quickly and burning their own land, but the ingenuity of it becomes evident very quickly in 1942. In the summer of 1943, we have entered the war, but we were not willing to start fighting right away in Germany and Europe. And so we agreed with Churchill to begin fighting in northern Africa. And then it's only by the summer of 1943 that we are ready to come up the boot of Italy and fight in southern Europe. So if you look here on the map, you can see that the invasion of Africa was called Operation Torch. And you can see that we have taken over almost all of North Africa from the Germans who had come behind Mussolini and tried to control that. They still have a hold of Libya, but just not this part. So it's from here that we're going to then start attacking up the boot of Italy. And you can see in 1943 we have two famous battles called the Battle of Salerno and the Battle of Anzio, where we are going to be able to win significant battles in Italy that allow us to defeat Mussolini. He is overthrown. Him and his wife are found in a town in Italy and are brutally executed and hung up from their feet for all of the world to see. Hitler always knew that Mussolini was kind of the weak link in his chain. He'd already had to do a lot to try and support him when he became overwhelmed by Allied forces. So it wasn't really a surprise to Hitler, but definitely a setback. So it's by this time that now we are ready to actually invade Europe, and we decide to do that in June of 1944, and this is called D-Day, and this is the Normandy. It's called Operation Overlord, D-Day for Deployment Day, or the Normandy Landing, and our future president, Dwight D. Eisenhower, is going to be the overall commander in charge of leading the D-Day invasion, but we're going to invade northern France here as a means of taking back Western Europe from Hitler. It's the largest amphibious invasion ever in world history. By amphibious, we mean moving from sea to land. Okay, so that was the invasion of Normandy on D-Day. And in class, I'll show you this video clip of that to help augment your understanding of it. What's cool is in World War II, we actually get color video for the first time. The invasion is ultimately successful, and we do free the French in northern France, and we begin moving ever eastward towards Berlin as the Soviets are starting to move ever westward. And we'll know that we won the war when Soviet and British and American troops meet in the middle, I guess you would say. Hitler's last gasp is called the Battle of the Bulge. I'll show you a drawing in class that'll help you understand why this is called the Battle of the Bulge. But basically, the Germans have a huge counteroffensive where they break into Allied lines, and they make a significant dent in our line, and then we have to fight our way back in a counteroffensive. When we finally succeed at doing that, Germany's last offensive fails, and it becomes ever clearer that the Germans are going to lose the war. And that is when Hitler decides that he needs to take drastic action to avoid being captured by Allied troops. So he and his new wife, Eva Braun, they had dated for a long time but had not been married. Hitler had no children. They decide to commit suicide, Eva by drinking poison, and then Hitler shot himself. And then he ordered that the troops burn his body so that it could not be mistreated by Allied forces. Unfortunately, that same time, our president dies. At the same time that in May of 1945 we signed the surrender, and this becomes known as Victory in Europe Day, or VE Day, and our very inexperienced Vice President, Harry S. Truman, becomes president after having been in office only 80 days. FDR had selected a new Vice President in Harry Truman the fourth time he was elected. So that is the European front. We'll stop there, and on our next flip video, I will talk to you more about the Pacific realm, okay? And we'll look at some other things related to this in class that help answer any questions. Okay, see you later.